So we've got a 15-mark evaluation question here, which simply states, death is not the end. Discuss this statement showing you've considered more than one point of view. Now, the only specific in this is you must refer to religion and belief in your answer. You don't have to put an atheist or humanist viewpoint in, but you must have religious beliefs in your answer. Things to point out on a 15-mark question: you must always have at least 2 points of view, preferably 2 and a conclusion. This one carries the spelling, punctuation and grammar marks as well, so we are going to be careful with simple things like paragraphs, like speech marks if we need them, like capital letters as well. Let's see what we can do then. You don't have to write loads to get the full marks. Let's have a look and see if I can talk you through it. Death is not the end. It seems like a very daunting question, but with a little bit of knowledge, you've got this. And here's how we're going to try and do it. So first up, I am going to take my Catholic viewpoint. This is on the Applied Catholic Theology paper. It's from the Life and Death section. So let's start with a Catholic view on this statement. Catholics would agree with the statement, death is not the end, because of their belief in heaven, hell, and purgatory. According to Catholic teaching in the Catechism, each person is judged by God and sent to one of these 3 states. And I'm going to explain them with a bit more evidence. Heaven is eternal life with God. Hell is eternal separation from Him. And purgatory is purification for those not ready for heaven. Let's throw one more piece of evidence into this paragraph. Jesus' parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Jesus' parable of the rich man and Lazarus. You can't see my page. Lazarus illustrates this belief. Illustrates this belief and reinforces, let's go back to the question, reinforces Catholic beliefs that death is not the end. Use the words of the question again, that death is not the end, but our actions affect what comes next. So there's your first Catholic point. We've got a really strong first paragraph here for our statement, death is not the end. Now, it's not going to get as many marks until we can show some alternative viewpoints. So let's have a look at another one. I'm actually going to have a look here at non-religious arguments. We can do it in this question because the statement is just death is not the end. So this is how I'm going to go next. Some non-religious people, such as atheists and humanists, reject the idea of life after death. Believing death is the end of existence. Bring it back to the words of the question every time. Believing that death is the end of personal existence. They argue there is no evidence of a soul or afterlife, and that people only live on through memories. Their influence or biologically through their children. Now there is another point we can remember here as well. However, some point to, and it's really important by the way, this word however, we could have put it here as well actually, however, or you could use alternatively or on the other hand. However, some point to experiences or cases of remembered lives. That's such as, we've got a case study that we've looked at, such as James Leiniger, who recalls details as a World War II pilot. As possible evidence that consciousness might continue after death. Now I could go on to a conclusion here. I've given two contrasting viewpoints, but I do have just a small other point I'd like to make before I get to my conclusion. And 15 marks, 15 minutes. I've got time to do it as well. Other Christians, I'm going to actually put to show I'm evaluating. On the other hand, let's show that we're not just putting a set of paragraphs in, we are using evaluative language. On the other hand, some Christians also believe, to be honest it's probably all Christians, but I'll go with some, also believe that Jesus is, being careful with my spelling, punctuation and grammar on this one, resurrection is strong evidence that death is not the end. Again, the words of the question in there, the words of the statement. The resurrection is central to Christian faith, showing Jesus conquered death. I'm not sure if I can spell conquered. Conquered. There we go. Jesus conquered death and offering hope of eternal life to all believers. If you want a source of evidence to really make this strong, we can talk about St. Paul. St. Paul writes that if Christ has been raised, then believers will be raised too. Remember, St. Paul said over 500 people saw the resurrected Jesus. And again, I want to link it to what that means for Christians today. This gives Christians, really explain my point, confidence that death is not final, but a transition to a new life with God. Remember, St. Paul said, death is not the end of life, but a change in life. We'll not all sleep, but be changed. Now, I've got 3 great points there, but I'm still going because I've got time and I've got a conclusion in my head, which is this. In conclusion, I agree with the statement, death is not the end. Again, words of the statement in my writing. Make sure the examiner knows that I am still on the right path. Death is not the end. Because of Jesus' words to the criminal on the cross, I've saved a strong point for my conclusion. Jesus' words to the criminal on the cross, truly, today, you will be with me in paradise. It's from Luke's Gospel. You will be with me in paradise. And again, let me explain what I mean when I make that statement. This shows that Jesus promised life after death. To those who believe in him. While non-religious views offer alternative explanations, the teachings of Jesus and the hope of resurrection provide a strong foundation for believing death is not the end. Done. Now, to summarise then, 15-mark question, the evaluate question. If we look at it just from an evaluation point of view, we've had the statement for us that was death is not the end. I've told us why Catholics would agree with the statement. I keep using the words of the statement in my answer. We've got sources of evidence in the first paragraph. We've talked about the rich man and Lazarus. And I've used my point and my evidence and explained what that means for Catholic beliefs today. Then I've put an alternative paragraph in, an alternative view, only just remembering to start it with the word however, to show evaluative language. Finished off that paragraph, and I had a third one to make, so I've done it again. Evaluative language. On the other hand, I've talked about Jesus' resurrection and linked it to St. Paul, and again what that means for Catholics and Christians today. Then finally, I've taken my conclusion and I've kept a point back. I've used Jesus talking to the criminal on the cross as a strong point that I haven't used yet. Hopefully that's given you some information about Catholic beliefs in death, Catholic beliefs in resurrection, other views on life after death as well, plus some hints and tips for doing your 15-mark evaluation questions.